Welcome, everyone. I'm here with actor, producer, and director Leif Tilden, and we're going to be discussing his work with the gorilla suits. So, thanks so much, Leif, for joining us.
Thank you.
So,
Um, what would you like to talk about?
sure. So, I want to know like how you got started in the business altogether.
Well, um, let's see. Well, I went to NYU and studied at the experimental theater wing, which is a very uh, one aspect of the experimental theater. I wanted to be a Butoh dancer, at a high school. My dad was taught mythology and he was a painter and exposed me to a lot of crazy dance theater, experimental theater, kind of stuff, all over the world actually. So so I was really drawn to alternative ways of storytelling. And a lot of it is very in the body, there was an old production of this theater director, London English theater director Peter Brook, who did this renowned version of Midsummer Night's Dream, and it was just done in a black box. I think there was a swing, there was very minimal, and I just was very drawn to making something out of the empty space. I just really um So, and in the experimental theater wing, there's a lot about collaboration and inside out sort of work as actors. Um, getting really in touch with your body, very, Jersey Grotowski, kind of stuff. And so out of when I graduated from experimental theater wing, I was doing all kinds of things that we won't bore you with, but the very first gig I got that paid me enough to pay the bills was the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And and that was crazy because I collected comic books as a kid. My dad started my comic book collection when my mother died and would, they were divorced. I started living with my dad. It was a very emotional time. I was 7 and and he would bring my lunch to me every day, in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and he'd bring me a sandwich and a comic book. And my dad loved comic books back. This is like 1971. My dad thought the illustrations were amazing back then. My dad thought that was such a great art form. And I think if my dad was coming out of school, because he was an illustrator and did amazing artwork himself. He could just render a saber-toothed tiger skull and it would just look like a picture. Like it was so great. And he was a medical illustrator as well. So I did anatomical drawing. So he really appreciated great illustrators. So that's why he liked comic books. Like he liked the stories, but he was the art, the character work. And so when I got the Ninja Turtles, it was like, and I was living above an underground comic book store that had the original Ninja Turtles, which was black and white, and they were hardcore vigilantes. And I was really into this comic book. So when I got it and I called my dad, he's like, that's so bizarre. You're going to be a Ninja Turtle. And I was also a huge Muppet fan, and the Henson Creature Shop was going to be making, and Star Wars fan. Like I was all over. Like I was a kid in a candy store. It was Christmas for me. It wasn't just getting a job as an actor. I couldn't believe the world that I was stepping into. And I remember like flying to London and going to the creature shop, and they put me up at Jim Henson's place. It was like this townhouse nearby, And I'm like, I'm staying at Jim Henson's house in London, and I walked into the creature shop and it was literally, the NASA of puppetry and animatronics. Characters from Labyrinth and Dark Crystal are hanging from the ceilings, and Falcor's head is in the corner just collecting dust, you know. And I was just and people and they're like these all these idiot savants, like sculpting and making maquettes and working with animatronics and creating characters and doing drawings and playing with neoprene and foam and body casts and like it was like that there was this warehouse was just alive with people devoting themselves to creating characters and creatures and fantasy, suspension of disbelief, and I mean it's sort of like was sort of a world of autism as well too. It's like all these people are on the spectrum, not really, but I think probably. I mean, I just think everybody's on the spectrum in some way, and so but these people were just nerds, yeah, and I just love what they're doing, and they're so interesting and smart, and just getting into the details of like how to manipulate a pinky, and a devil org, like crazy shit. It's like awesome. So I was just in heaven, and they put me in a body cast, and I had to stand like this, and they completely covered me in ace bandages and whatever, and with foam, and I had to hold my breath and made a body cast so they could build a Ninja Turtle around me. And it was that moment, where I'm getting this body cast and I'm breathing through a straw that I kind of, the first time I sort of consciously connected to what I'm about to do, like my body is going to fill just like it's filling this body cast. And I really kind of committed, not consciously, but I did. I had to be still. And I just became this sort of like still body cast scarecrow for these people. And and like you really, I had to really like be still and hold my breath and breathe slowly. And they didn't want my lungs to expand too much. And it really was sort of like the foundation of this kind of work. I mean, I knew that then, like, this is what it is about, like having intention, being still, like you're putting all that into your body. It's like, I mean, it's not your mind, it's not, it's your body putting all that focus, into your breath, into your being still, your bones, your muscles. And I was like, okay, this is the journey I'm, going to be on. And the process of that was intense, for me. And I remember like I was just thinking like who should I study, for this kind of work? Like and it was Kevin Peter Hall, the guy who was the first Predator with Schwarzenegger, and he was also here in the Hendersons. And this is like a wonderful, I know people like call this sort of work suit performing. And that's okay term, but it's sort of the surface level term for it. It's kind of doesn't really, and I call him a physical performer. Like he's a physical performer, and and he was Kevin Peter Hall. He died of AIDS, I think, and
He was
he
a
was
tall guy, right?
7'2" black
I
guy.
remember him. Yeah.
He's an amazing physical performer, and you watch, and I would just watch those movies, I had VHS. And I would just watch Harry and the Hendersons and The Predator. And The Predator was the most amazing. I mean, he was being like this physical comedian and Harry and the Hendersons, but in The Predator, he had to just be kind of still. And the way he filled out I mean, the costume was wonderful because that's part of making these. I really want to state that up front that what also is the big response people who are responsible for making that character come to life are the people that created that character, obviously. and not just how they look, but so that a performer can translate their exoskeleton to this other layer. Because people build shit all the time, but you can't really connect to it, or it doesn't really do what you want it to do, or in a lot of times maybe you want to let the costume dictate what you can do, what are its restrictions that end up being its talents. Oh, it can't do this. What can it do? And so you let the costume sort of lead and a good build enables that to happen. And so that, of course, that was a good build because he would just stand there and it was such presence and he really filled it out. And you could really feel like he could feel the wind brush by him, or you could tell that he could smell, like it was so subtle. It was amazing if you watch him. And he doesn't get talked about enough. He doesn't get this is I mean, I always tell people Kevin Peter Hall is like, the Marlon Brando of physical performers or suit performers. He's, I mean, a legend. And people should look at those movies and watch his work, and because there's a lot of other people that have gotten recognition. Like Doug Jones is an amazing performer. I love Doug. He's a sweetheart and he's super talented. You know, I would say Doug Jones, is like the Christopher Walken or the Robert De Niro of this work. But Kevin Peter Hall was the Marlon Brando, like he's the Daniel Day-Lewis, and Doug Jones just has Doug Jones just has some Oscars behind him, like he's what was that Lady in the Water or something in the Water? What was that? What he did? He played that creature. Um,
Not Lady in the Lake. I'm not sure
no,
which.
not Lady in the Lake. What's that? Doug Jones. I mean, everything Doug Jones is just so good. And I don't think a lot of people understand what he needed to do in order to achieve what he does in some of those roles. Like, you break down the script, you study, and it's not just, oh my God, it must have been hot. No, like he's making a lot of very interesting creative choices and he's translating that into his body to convey the intention, the moment. Doug is, he's just one of my favorites. I think he's awesome.
Did he work on Batman Returns?
Did he? I don't know. I don't
I
know
think he
his.
was the small clown in
Doug
Batman.
is very tall. He's
Well, I mean small as in like skinny. There was a guy
very
beside him who
skinny.
was a
Yeah.
bit really overweight guy. It was like the big clown and the small clown in one of
I
his
don't
movies.
know his resume, maybe, but he's
Yeah.
and he's just so good. And what was it, Andy Serkis? This guy does motion capture,
Oh yeah.
Planet of the Apes, Gollum. Like he's right at that level, and Andy Serkis, I give it up, because he's so emotional, because I really believe this work is inside out. You start here with my intention, the emotion, what you're trying to achieve in the scene. Vulnerability is very important, that you can actually transfer your vulnerability and fragility as a human to these creatures to give them life, because that indeed is what life is: breath, bloodstream, vulnerability, all the emotions. And Annie and Doug are just so good at that.
Right. I
Um,
remember Kevin Peter Hall from Big Top Pee-wee is the first time I ever saw him in a film.
oh
It
yeah,
stood out to me as he was the John Henry. He was really tall, and I was like, wow, that guy is intense. And then I found out that he was married to Elena Reed Hall, who was in Sesame Street.
that's right. That's right. That's right.
So it all connects.
Wonderful person too. So, yeah, so, I started watching them, watching Kevin, I didn't know Doug at this point, and I was, and I would like spend a lot of time I was living in Chinatown in New York City, and I would make my own bow staff, and I was nerding out. I was just studying, and I had a loft, um, I put together right after college and had a lot of space. I had a little theater company with some friends called the Fragile Anchor Theater. We did like Sam Shepard plays and I would just move in that space, you know, just finding this guy or the possibilities of guys. I didn't know that much martial arts. I wasn't working on my moves. I was just, like just trying to find like a teenager, who's got maybe some anger problems. And so that was funny. And finally we went to Wilmington to shoot the Ninja Turtles. And one of the first things that I saw when I was there, when I was walking around the back lot, was I saw this huge head of King Kong, the original King Kong, because this was the De Laurentiis Studios. It used to be the De Laurentiis Studios. And I'm like, what the fuck? And it was like barely covered with cloth to protect it from the weather. I'm like, what is going on here? This is King Kong. Like this is King Kong's head.
Right.
What is it doing just like out here, like in the scrap heap? And I remember like walking back and going to the main offices at these North Carolina studios, they were called in. I was like, "Do you know there's King Kong's head?" "Oh yeah." "Oh, can someone cover it? Don't you want to cover it up? What are you doing with it? Is it for sale? I'll take it off your hands." It's like anyway. But that was a precursor to, you know, King Kong was amazing. It was a big part of my life. And watching that as a kid, the stop motion. And so and then I did Dinosaurs, after that, and Robbie, and that costume had this huge tail was very weighted, and that really dictated my movement. Like really fed me like how Robbie kind of walks through the space, and it kind of had this sort of bounce to it because it was on this sort of cable that was attached to this harness on my back. And so when I'd walk, this kind of heavy tail behind me would and I just kind of I just let me give Robbie this sort of, teenage groovy kind of bounce, that it went with.
Right.
And I mean, that's just one aspect. Anyway, so soon after Dinosaurs is when I got this tryout to do Born to Be Wild. And I was really excited about it. Like I was, wow, okay, yeah. And I went to the LA Zoo. I think about almost close to a month. I went there every weekday and I would just sit with the gorillas. And to the point where I was tripping out, where I was a part of them, but I was the outcast. I had this freedom to sort of sit on the outs. I could leave at any time. But I went through all kinds of trippy, like I missed my family. Needed to be close, even though I didn't want to get into prison. I needed to. And I just studied them and watched them and, fell in love with um not just those animals, but animals in general. Just kind of, it was amazing. And they were so still, and strong and fluid and their strength was exhibited in the fact that when they had to jump or run or do something, they made it look easy, you know. And they're always like, touching themselves and grooming each other and very tactile creatures. And I just thought that was so interesting. So I had this tryout and I did this did my tryout, did my audition, and I just did this silverback gorilla the way it was my take, like a realistic kind of grumpy, but accepting his situation. And I just put this silverback gorilla in this room, and he's the one, and I knew I'm being observing, I'm in an audition, but I treated the character like I'm the one watching. I'm the one checking you out because I don't know. What are you going to do? I don't know. Are you going to take me to the zoo or something? Are you going to you're going to make me join the circus, which was kind of part of the story. So I wanted to be this sort of, and I kind of, everything I did was slow. And I kind of, there's one moment I kind of got on their desk and lied down and just kind of hung out with them. And so, and anyway, and the person before me, it's a complete opposite of that. They were like all over the hoo, 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 hoo. Like they were like, it's like, like, what do like, okay, like
Like a cheesy interpretation of what it is.
whatever. I don't want to judge it. I'm just saying it was like hyper and, and so I forget the name of the guy that made the suits. There's this independent guy.
Was it Tony Gardner?
There you go, Tony Gardner. And his posse, and they had this like warehouse in the valley somewhere, I think. And and they gave me some arm extensions because they're going to be making these suits, which many people were involved in, and each hair, one at a time, was punched in, you know. And they were really going into like the mechanics of it. And we would really, like I said, it's very important, that these fingers have some sort of movement of some kind, at least being able to fold and pick and so those were one set of hands, which weren't, I couldn't run of those because they're very delicate and all kinds of cables. And so there was another set of arms that I would use with closed fists that I would run on and walk on. And they would give me those to take home. And I would spend hours, walking my dog. I was living in Brentwood, California, and I had a golden retriever, and I just walk her around as a gorilla.
That's great.
And it so happened to be that I was like a neighbor of Nicole Simpson, who was killed by OJ. I was like three houses down.
Oh, wow.
Um, that's a whole other thing. So, and I would walk Beckett around, the neighborhood as and I would talk to the director, and we'd do a lot of rehearsals, and we would be talking about how we were going to approach this gorilla. And he really wanted it to be this sort of subtle um, work, the sort of deep, kind of believable animal. So I remember, so we went in there, we had this scene in a school where that was the location where they made this sort of prison, the cell, not a prison, but like a cage where the kid rescues the gorilla. Um, and we were doing all kinds of subtle work and very still. And the suit was amazing. And I forget what happened, but very close, like a couple of days after that, the footage was sent to Warner Brothers in Hollywood. And this production executive like showed up, like literally two or three, because we were still at the school. So he literally showed up and John, the director, John Gray, amazing person. He was like, Leif, they want this to be, this is not at all what they bought, like this, they faster, funnier. We have to come up with some bits, some comic bits. There needs to be more energy. There needs to be, and so the rest of the movie, I was in a bad mood for the rest of the movie. Like I was, this kid was really spoiled, this spoiled brat, like the actor.
Will Harnett.
Oh my God, this kid, he's probably a decent guy now, but like then but it wasn't really his fault. They wanted him. There's these thing called forced calls for kids that are underage. They only can work a certain number of hours. They broke that rule all the time and would give him and his parents gifts, to accept these forced calls, weightlifting sets, bicycles, whatever he wanted. He was like spoiling this kid to break the rules. And I think it got to his head. And at one point, he was being so difficult. We were in Hawaii, and John Gray had to say, I'm not going to go into exactly what happened, but John Gray had to say in front of the whole crew, Will, we're working with you, not for you, you know. So there's that dynamic, and then I'm just like in this suit. It's like for one thing, like they had me like the girl that gets sick. If you remember the movie, like he's sick and he's on this couch in this cabin,
Right.
and I'm like, he wouldn't lie like this on a pillow straight. Like, I was constantly having these conversations. No, 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 they want you to lie. We need you to lie like you're like relaxing, on the couch. Like what? They had me doing all kinds of things, frozen like I'm a statue, playing with these hot dogs, shaking a Coca-Cola cannon that goes into my face, like so I was, I look at that movie and because I was so into it, um, but it's like it just went off the rails,
Right.
like it's just, to me that movie's about connection, and the sign language was just an extension of just like, and maybe I was just naive. It's my, um, which was probably 80% of it. Going into it, I thought it was going to be some sort of subtle, realistic, beautiful, loving piece.
Right.
And the journey was just like, what are we doing here? And so I was just grumpy too. Like I'd just be in the suit and
Well, I heard an interview with Will, now this was years ago, and he told a story about, and I don't know if it's true or not. I was going to ask you if it was like you were in the suit and wanted to get out, and you couldn't get out because for whatever reason, and
I smashed an ashtray.
yeah, he said you started having a full-on panic attack, and he's like, this gorilla's going crazy, and all this stuff.
First of all, no, he's correct. He's correct. And I like slammed my fist on the table and it broke this ashtray but I was, no one could understand me. Sometimes I would forget, but I was just like, what the fuck is happening? Like I just kind of, and I was getting histrionic and I was just like, but I was saying, like, what are we doing? Because it was just, there was so much. It was like wasting of time and yeah, and attitudes and ego. I was just constantly when you're in these suits, sometimes you're just sitting there and they forget when you're this being in a suit, sometimes they forget that the being is observing what's around them, and you can, because no one can see exactly. I have these contact lenses. I'm kind of buried in it. Like I'm watching things and staring at things and that I wouldn't be able to do if it was just sitting here like this. So I'm a voyeur. Like I'm really in on like the intricacies of, these like political battles. And when we were at the cabin, there was all this bullshit happening. that had nothing to do with making a movie or telling a story, And I was just like, and this was towards the end of the production, and I admit it, like I just kind of got so fed up. I'm like, what the fuck? Like that's basically, you know, um, Will's constantly complaining, like, this is not the right power drink, like he was complaining at that moment about like this is not mango, and I'm just like, I'm in a fucking suit. I'm hoping to get water. You're complaining about mango. Aren't you like thinking about the scene? It's like all kinds of shit. We had like this second AD that was like super like loud and weird and bad at her job, and it was just
Right.
so weird. Um, and John Gray was like amazing. Like he was just like calm, cool, and collected the whole time, like, and he just looked like he was depressed, So then I'm also kind of like defending him, It's like it was just there's so much going on, So
Well, you spent a lot of time with Will, with you guys having the scenes and stuff together. Was he ever like,
no, no, I mean to say one thing, we didn't.
oh, really?
This
Okay.
this is the thing about Will Horniff. Comes from a very fundamentalist Christian background, family. The only interview the only PR they were willing to do to push the movie was the 700 Club.
That's crazy.
It
Wow.
was the only thing they were willing to do. They weren't going to do any of the big nighttime talk shows. 700 Club, that's it. Had to be a
Wow.
Christian based, right? So that was weird. That vibe. I never hung with Will. We never had lunch, never hung out on the weekend, never really talked about things. He was like elusive, doing his thing. At one point, I think his mother had like some sort of like dance class or something. I don't know, but like somebody from
Yeah.
her class, some school, ended up like being his, not, what do you call it? Babysitter, because the
Like his
parents were busy. Huh?
guardian, like a guardian or something
A
like that.
guardian, and she was like 18, and they were like fooling around. And because his parents weren't there, he was asking for beer and whatever. Like he was just like off the rails, like, oh my God, my parents aren't here. And he's like a teenager. Oh, and he was drinking these powder drinks to buff up, right?
Yeah.
So at the beginning, he was just like a normal looking teenage kid. By the end of the movie, he looked like, you know, who's that guy from on the TV show The Reacher? Like he was just like, "Arr." It's like, oh my God. And John and I had a conversation was like, look at Will. Oh my God, he's like gained like 20 pounds of muscle
Yeah.
during the time. And he was, and so I never, it was like it was odd. So odd. And the other guy that was, I wish they cast this other guy. He actually died, this other actor. Um, Dynamic audition. Like he was crazy. It was like so street though. And I think they were kind of scared because he was kind of a little too urban, maybe. But this other kid was a wonderful actor. And Will was like the blonde, pretty boy.
And he
So
had done the Sandlot up until this point and a couple other things. So that's probably what put him, I don't know.
maybe, I don't know.
I know
Um,
he teaches Taekwondo now in New Jersey. He has a martial arts school that he teaches now.
wow.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, but that was a moment where, when John yelled at him, we're working with you, not for you. Because it was just this constant, and for him to like get into emotion as an actor, he had to like hurt himself. Like where this, I was like, there was like this apple box. It was like a close up, and it was in Hawaii where he's like saying we're saying goodbye, and he had to get emotional. Just before those takes, he slammed his fist into a wooden, apple box
Uh,
to get those tears, and it was just kind of like violent, and it was kind of like, and by this point, I had already like, I had my say of the goofiness of the show. And by this point, I was just like, okay, you know. Um, I didn't even like, oh my God, what are you doing to your hand, dude? You know. So I don't want to, I went off
Like
on the rails on that.
roid rage.
So that, that making of that movie was, it was, God, wow. And it actually shows in the movie. Like, like you kind of watch this movie and you're just like, this is kind of ridiculous. And then I was really bummed out because, you know, I really took pride in, anyway, so the next thing I did was Buddy, and I was hired to be part of, I knew this guy, Mac Wilson, who is a Henson puppeteer. And he was the Henson Creature Shop made the gorilla. Oh, they made the baby gorilla. I'm not sure if they made Buddy as an adult. That could have been Baker or Winston,
I
but
think it was Baker.
yeah, but the Hensons built the baby gorilla, the baby Buddy. And so we had someone on the head, one person on an arm, another person on an arm, each leg. There were five of us. And, we Rene Russo's arms in the crib, and it was amazing, because here we were and we gave full permission. We want this baby gorilla to look like a real baby gorilla. And we had a lot of time rehearsing and be together because Bunraku is multiple people on an object or a character to bring it to life. And that was sort of the style. So it's a very collaborative event. And that was amazing because then we're like getting into behavior and it was beautiful. um, but I think I think like one of the chimpanzees, there were real chimpanzees in the movie. One of the chimpanzees like ripped someone's shoulder out of its socket.
My goodness.
They shut down production for a couple weeks or something.
I was wondering how that was acting alongside real.
We weren't allowed near them. Like the chimps were like they're dangerous. They had these like electrical rods to if they get out of hand, like it was crazy. Like it wasn't safe. And everyone was like, the chimps are here, like everyone was afraid. Like, I don't know if that's, responsible filmmaking. But um that was amazing. And then I forget, George of the Jungle, I was one of the gorillas. Um and then did I do something else?
Ace Ventura when nature calls.
Ace Ventura. Now, Ace Ventura was like another thing. Ace Ventura was so much fun. And the same people that Tony Gardner guys made the silverback for Ace Ventura 2. And I was a little short for it, but they asked me to do it. Um, and the original script, the original idea is that he towards the end of the movie, like this silverback gorilla is supposed to rape Jim Carrey. Something in the end, I guess some decision was made to change it to something else. But that was a lot of fun. But that was a more controlled, goofy, because you're in this comedy and silverback. I grab his head and he was amazing. A couple of things I remember for that. One is like this is like on the edge of cell phones, and the only one who had a cell phone was Jim Carrey, and it was like in this black box that he kind of flipped open and antenna. We're in the middle of South Carolina, and he was like, "Hey, Bob," like it's like, oh, is that what we're all gonna have one day? It's like this box, and um, and so we have this scene where you don't see the gorilla have sex with Jim Carrey. He drags him behind these bushes. And these special effects guys, I don't know, some people were hired or part of the crew. probably the special effect or the greensmen or something. They're supposed to mimic what it is behind the bushes of what's happening behind the bushes. This sort of, and they were doing this kind of thing with it. And Jim Carrey like hated it. He's like, no, 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 no. Let's do another take. Leaf, come with me. I need two people. Like you be over here, I'll be over here, and just follow my lead. Because Jim really wanted it to be like this, and it was like this. Like it was like this. He really was like, and he was screaming, and he was like taking these bushes and just jamming them forward and yanking them back and jamming them forward. And it was like so Jim Carrey's like his humor, you know.
That's fantastic.
But I don't know. Like then when you see the movie, like you know, the silverback glitter, it's not that doesn't happen. And I was so disappointed, you know. And that was that, you know, that was cool. You know, it wasn't that wasn't sort of a character study, you know, like
More for comic relief.
yeah, you know.
Now, I was told that now this is on the group that I'm on, the Ape Suit Cinema. So
Yeah.
so Tony Gardner is in that group,
Oh,
and
he is.
essentially they were saying that the gorilla suit from Ace Ventura was from Born to Be Wild, not the Katie suit, but the Bobo the gorilla suit, the
Oh, I think that's
silverback,
true. Yeah, I
and they
did.
switched the head out.
I think you're right. I think you're right. Yeah, I did. Katie. That's right. It was a female gorilla. Um, I think you're right on that. I think you're right. Yeah. And the guy playing that character, Bobo, in Born to Be Wild, was this guy. His name is Bill Beretta, who was Earl Sinclair in Dinosaurs. He plays Robbie's dad. And he's this huge Henson puppeteer now. You know, and he was the lead in Happy Town Murders. He plays like the private investigator with what's her name, the actress. Uh, Bill was in that suit, and we were in Hawaii, and he passed out. Yeah, he passed out from the heat inside that suit.
Yeah,
All worried about him. But he's a terrific physical performer. Earl Sinclair in Dinosaurs is amazing, you
yeah,
know.
yeah. Bill, I know Bill about, I'm a huge Muppet fan myself, so I knew his
Okay.
name from that. Um,
Yeah,
where did
Bill's
you
amazing. He's amazing.
where did you guys shoot that cabin scene? That was the next question I had about.
We
I know
were
what
in Seattle area, you know. Yeah, I mean, you know, it's very in the beginning, and it's part of my frustration, obviously. You know, there's a lot of things that but we really went after making this sort of realistic gorilla and just even just little things on like running the angles of, you know, just to capture um it just became faster and funnier, you know. Um but the guys, I mean, that suit's amazing and those people are so talented. Tony Gardner, all those guys are like, you know, they just like the Henson, all those shops, you know, Baker, Winston, Steve Johnson, all the like those people that make creatures and design creatures and um they're all incredible. You know, they all um can puppeteer themselves. You know, they're all very creative, big nerds, smart. They're like it's always like you go into these shops that make these creatures and everybody is like Mensa. You know, they're all just like wicked sharp, you know. I always get intimidated a little bit, you know, because they're just, you know, like they just talk about something, you know. You know how many species in Madagascar? You know, like what? You know, like
Yeah, I've been in situations like that before.
yeah.
I was wondering, like that scene where Katie falls in the ocean from the cliff. I'm assuming that was a stunt person, but was that a different suit that was used
Well,
for the
they had
water?
I think to initiate the fall, they had a stunt guy. I don't really remember. I remember waiting when they dragged me out. We are actually in the ocean when they're pulling me out. We're on the shore somewhere in Washington State. But underwater was at a pool. I think it was a pool somewhere in Seattle. I think it was part of some maybe YMCA or some training facility where they had like an Olympic-sized pool or something. I think. And they rigged this little oxygen tank, a really like a small one that could fit inside the suit so that I could, and I actually had me fall backwards, and it was me, I did it, fall back off the diving board into the pool. Oh, and they had weights on me so that I would sink. And there was some fear and safety talk about this because, and they had scuba divers to lift me up. But going underwater with weights, and I've been in suits so many times before. I know how waterlogged they can be. I'm going to be really heavy. Like I was a little anxious about it. I was like a little, but what happened is when I hit the water, the the little tube that I had that was connected to the tank, this little oxygen tank, popped out of my mouth. So I had to hold my breath. And I knew that we were rolling. And so I just kind of went into this sort of like, okay, I'll just hold my breath, you know, and just go with it. But I couldn't breathe. Now, what the problem with that is that also the scuba divers and everyone else don't think there's a problem, right? They think that I can breathe. They gave me an oxygen tank, and so I'm sinking and I can feel myself sink and I'm holding my breath. And then at some point, I can feel the hands on me. I can feel like now they're gonna, you know, and I wasn't going anywhere. Like they were struggling to lift me out of the water. And it was that, I don't know how many seconds it took from that moment to when I actually, you know, pierced the surface of the water. I was kind of worried, you know. Um, because and then and then it wasn't over. As soon as I pierced the water, I still couldn't breathe because I have all this water. It's collected in the mouth and in the head. So I literally had to kind of reach my hand through the arms of the gorilla so that I could, because I had these fingers like this. So I had to take my real hand and go through the skin to get to my mouth to be able to open it up and clear it so I could grab some air. So that was, and when they saw me do that, they knew, you know, there was an issue. But I think we did another take and it was fine. They found a way of securing the tank and I like, give me us a hang signal if it pops out of your mouth again. Like, we kind of worked out um, but yeah, we did it in a pool.
That scared me watching that as a kid. I was like, oh my, and it wasn't even from the standpoint of I think this is real, but it was like, wow, the guy that's in that suit, the claustrophobia, the fear of drowning, like all these things are coming through my head, and I'm like, I would hate to have been in that position.
Yeah, I
So
mean, I never felt claustrophobic. From the Ninja Turtles, the dinosaurs, so all these different characters I did. That wasn't an issue. Um, it was once I mean it's just it's so the heat really was an issue. Like in Robbie, sometimes I would just take a nap in the entire thing, you know, because it was kind of like there was sort of like this, oh, we got to get the suits off of them. We got to give them some air. We got to give them, and sometimes it got so kind of crazy with protection, as if we were suffering from some sort of trauma, with this sort of energy of like, oh, let's take care of the kids. Oh my God, they've been beaten up by their parents so much. Like we really got to hold them and cuddle them. Like if you were a kid, like my mother committed suicide, so I understand when people hear that when I was a kid, it's like, oh my God, that must have been horrible, like the first time they say it, it's like, okay, thanks, thanks. Yeah, it was horrible, you have no idea, but you don't have to give me, you don't have to give me presents or money or you don't have to keep looking at me so much, And so it kind of reminded me sometimes there's a little too much. It's like we're like, and we're like still on a scene. We don't have that ability of just stepping off the set like a normal actor, just stepping off the set and taking a seat or standing by and stepping into it again and continue, it's like, oh, get the head off, get it, oh my God, and they'll make a decision for you, like that you need. And sometimes I'm like, no, 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 relax. It's okay. It's all good. It's all good. I'm just going to stay in. And yes, I'm sweating and yes, I'm hot, but it's just like playing sports. When you get to like the third quarter, you're wet. It is what it is. You're dirty, you're wet, you're sweaty, it just is. It's just you just accept, you know.
Well, it seems
They
like
don't.
you enjoy doing it too. And I mean, I guess some people wouldn't be as as
No,
cool, calm, and collected with it.
yeah, I mean, I think that, there's some I really loved doing it. Like I'm doing this dragon in May. And I really, it's amazing work, like it's whether you're manipulating someone with your hand, or you're wearing a mask and it's like mask work. Um, like I was watching that. Do you see that movie, The Different Man? A Different Man, about that guy with the elephantitis?
I've seen press from it. I have not seen it yet. It's on my
It's
list
it's
though.
it's cool. It's cool. Like the guy, that actor who plays Donald Trump in The Apprentice, and he plays Tommy Lee with Pamela Anderson in that movie. Great actor, Sebastian something. He plays this guy like it's like Eric Stoltz in The Elephant Man. He plays this guy with like completely different story, but he was really beautiful with like his body work and trying to, this guy that has this sort of, this kind of, he's not, I think he's depressed, maybe. He's like, he's insecure. He's kind of, but he's here, he's present in the world, and he's got this horrible disease, affliction. I don't know if it's a disease. And and he's just, you can see it in his body. His body's a little, protects himself a little bit, and it's kind of, and it's wonderful, with this mask. It's basically mask work. You need to, how does this, how do you fill this with your body? How do you make your body an extension? So I love that work, and there are people that I think that don't understand it. We went through, there are a lot of people that were let go from Dinosaurs because they just didn't really, the original Charlene, the original mom, Fran, they just didn't connect, and not necessarily connect to the character, but connect to the work, connect to what that means to sort of be one and to give it this sort of energy and emotion, but also at the same time being led by these wonderful costumes that these people have made. Being led by, like I was talking about with Robbie with the tail, being led by that, and Robbie's head, this sort of had this kind of top heavy, you know, and so I kind of would, use that to give the hell, and what, you kind of merge with your creativity with what the costume's doing, and uh, it's just a wonderful world. I don't know if I must sound like I'm crazy, but like it's an amazing process because it's coming from different angles. You're feeling it and it's affecting you. How can I, like on turtles, I was always like, how can this skin feel alive and have nerve endings? And I would find some times where I'm adjusting the harness on the shell because because it's a little tight. I don't feel that, but I was just assuming, and I'd maybe itch my arm, like how can you help this costume have come alive in so many different ways, but you also have to let the costume lead, you know. I did some motion capture. I wish I continued doing motion capture because I think that's, but amazing what they can do now with it. But like the motion capture that I did, it's like it's a digital version of that. You can sometimes see on the screen what you're doing. You're in black and you have these little white balls around with you that are, I don't know the scientific terminology for it, but they show you what the character, the digital character, the 3D character that you're moving. And when you watch yourself moving in that character, you are also letting that character on the screen inform you, you don't. And so I think there's like there's a duality there that some people don't really understand. It's kind of trippy. Like I think maybe you have to be a person that smoked a lot of weed in your life or something like that.
For sure, yeah. I mean, I did something similar for the NIH years ago. They put me in a front of a green screen in a suit, and they had me do these different tasks for this brain scan study they were doing. Never got to see it. Never found out what it was,
You never
but
saw it?
never saw it. No, it's like one of those
But
things where they'll
what was the
say
suit?
it was just a green bodysuit.
Okay.
And so they would like isolate, they would have like my hand exposed or something, and the rest of me would be in a green suit.
And
And then they would
what were they having you do?
just do like subtle movements, like move your hand like this, and then we're going to capture that for a certain amount of minutes, and then you're going to move this other part. It was like this weird study thing, stuff that's over my head that they had me do. And I never got to see it. I wish I could have seen it. Um, it's like one of those things where they tell you, "Oh, we'll send you the footage," and they never do.
Oh
And you
my
follow
God.
up, and they act like they don't know you. So, but it was cool. It was
Oh,
cool.
you gotta be annoying. You just gotta keep going.
Yeah. Well,
Give me
now,
their contact information.
what's that?
Uh, I also wanted to say, there's other people that have done gorillas that I really admire. Who's the guy that did Mighty Joe Young?
John Alexander.
John Alexander. Like he's the shit, you know, with that kind of stuff. I think he's wonderful. Um, and then who is Peter who plays Buddy, the adult?
See my notes. Peter Elliott.
Peter Elliott. He's kind of a douche, but he was he kind of looked at me once. He's like, "You don't have the right legs to play a gorilla." It's like, shut up. This is kind of
What?
he's like Peter Elliott believes that he is like the quintessential whatever is in his mind. I don't know what he thinks he is, but whatever it is, he's the king of whatever that. So John Alexander is an amazing person, humble, soft spoken, and I think super talented. Mighty Joe Young's amazing. Probably like the best gorilla I've ever seen, like on screen.
And there's a
Besides
lot.
the digital CGI ones that we have, but he's
Yeah,
amazing.
there's a lot of BTS photos of the making of Mighty Joe Young on the cinema group. A lot of they
Okay,
love that
great.
film.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he's amazing, Um, uh, yeah. I'm trying to think. There was something else I wanted to say. I don't know, I forget. Anyway,
Well, Namir El Kadi performed Ape in George of the Jungle. Did you
that's right.
have any moments with him? I
Yeah,
think
he's
that,
a super nice guy, you know. Um, yeah, I mean, I kind of remember just kind of watching that and just thinking it just kind of brought back bad memories of Born to Be Wild, because kind of Disney meets, but it was, and he is a super nice guy. I just like, oh my God, okay, and it is what it is. I was just, it's not Mighty Joe Young.
right, right,
Uh,
and not realistic at all.
yeah, and I guess that's what it is, but why are you doing a real gorilla and not making it realistic? Like it doesn't, you know, like I just really believe it's cinematically fascinating. I believe in this quote. You're fascinating if you're fascinated. You are always fascinated by someone who is fascinated by what they're doing. You just are, and that fascination that they have and what they're doing is the key to diving deep into what they love to do. And so you are instantly intrigued and fascinated. And that's something that this production executive at Warner Brothers had no clue about. We were trying to dive deep, and get into the subtleties of like this, and they just didn't understand that. You know what I mean? Like people aren't going to get that, you know. Like, what are you talking about? You're out of your mind. I just think that maybe his job was on the line in that corner office and he needed to produce, or when he decided to greenlight this production, he expected a certain thing that we weren't delivering. That's probably what it was, you know. And there never was like this conversation. They should never have cast me, for instance. They should have got some vaudeville performer in San Francisco or something. Um,
They're just trying to make a kids film. I mean, they probably
I
weren't thinking deep
guess.
about it. Yeah,
Yeah, but like, but what does that mean? I mean, you know, what's that Disney film, an early Disney film with Mickey Mouse, and it's like terrifying. Um,
Fantasia.
Fantasia is super dark. That's a kid's film. Kids are not afraid of the dark. What are you talking about? I mean, they're afraid of the dark, but they're fascinated by the dark. You know what I mean? Like it's like kids love scary movies. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, I just don't think
So
those type of folks they're just money focused, and that's about it. Honestly,
I don't know. And I don't know what I'm talking. Yeah. I mean, it was my fault. I had like all these expectations. I was logging weeks and weeks of just walking around the neighborhood, being a gorilla. You know, I'd go to the dog park. I was out of my mind. I would like walk, I'd let my dog go in the dog park, Laurel Canyon Dog Park. And Beckett, my golden retriever, would just start running around, very social, happy dog. And I bring my arm extensions and I start walking around with the dogs.
That's great. I wish I could have seen this. This would have been
And and I would just, and it was, and every, and it wasn't like no one thought I was weird. All the actors and writers and aspiring directors, all the people that brought their dogs to the Laurel Canyon Dog Park, they're all like artists and, oh, okay, he's working on something. So it was very comfortable doing that, you know. So I logged days and days and days and days, hours, weeks of just sitting with the gorillas in the zoo. Like I just want to do this subtle, beautiful, you know. And it just became after day two, it became like this easy thing. So I was in a bad mood. So yeah, Will Hornuff was right. Yeah, I lost my shit. I just got to the point where I was just like, you guys are fucking stupid. Not you, but like the universe. This is stupid. What are we doing? We're making bullshit, you know. Um, but Will Horniff, it's a piece of work too. Right
you
back
know
at you, Will. Oh, what I want to say, Brendan Fraser, wonderful guy, and I worked with him on George of the Jungle and Monkey Bone. And I had this Cyclops character that had a couple of scenes with Brendan Fraser. Wonderful, person, you know.
he
Uh,
seems like a genuine person.
yeah, and Doug Jones is on that. Have you had Doug Jones on?
I have not, but I've been planning to reach out to him actually.
Dude, you gotta talk to Doug, because he's gonna have story after story, he's so talented. There's a lot of talented Misha Linsisti, who is Michelangelo and Charlene in Dinosaurs, as well as some other things. Super talented. Oh, forgot to say, beginning in Ninja Turtles 1, I went to the Creature Shop in London. Um, this guy, John Stevenson, who ran the Creature Shop, who was kind of oversaw all these amazing Yoda, oversaw the making of Yoda, all this stuff. So let me show you this commercial we were working on, and he puts his VHS in, and it's like on some glacier in Norway, and it's this polar bear running for its life as this helicopter shot is following this polar bear. And shot after shot, on the side of the polar bear running in the distance. And it was amazing. I was like, that's incredible. It's like, what did you guys do on this? He's like, oh, we made the polar bear. I'm like, what? And this polar bear, the guy that performed this polar bear was this guy, Dave Foreman, who was Leonardo in the original Ninja Turtles movie.
Funny how that all connects.
But I'm just saying, this guy, Dave, if he continued doing this work, because I don't think he didn't like it. He's a stunt coordinator now, but I don't know if he necessarily enjoyed himself. Wasn't grumpy or anything, but um, but that polar bear was the most, I think to this day was the most amazing thing I've seen in terms of a realistic animal being brought to life. I wish I had, you would never believe that this was a man in a suit. It was incredible.
That's amazing. I'd love to know.
Um, so I mean, I just think that I'm glad you wanted to talk about this because I mean, I don't know if I've done really anything that's, spectacular, but I really think that the work itself is spectacular.
It
And
is
I
for
don't
sure.
think that it gets enough praise. And when I say the work, I don't mean the performer inside. I mean all of it. The people that make it, designed it, conceive of it. The caretakers, the people that are helping the performer. It really is a village team that brings that character alive. There's so many elements and the camera angles. You win, you live or die by camera angles too, Um, mood, giving it texture, giving it maybe it's wet, maybe it's sweating, maybe shadows and it takes so many elements for you to believe that this thing is breathing and living, you know, and all of that, all these people, the lighting and the camera and the people that made it and the performer, there's so much going that goes into it, 360 for it to be something awesome, you know. And if one element is gone, there's something that you just don't, you know, and it happens all the time. I've seen all kinds of movies and shows, where you see this creature and you're like, Yoda. That's what makes Yoda so amazing. This is a hand puppet, this really big hand puppet. It's an arm and a hand, and Frank Oz and David Greenaway, who does the eyeballs. You know, Yoda's amazing. I mean, you all know he's a puppet, and it's like he's there, he's alive, and people who made Yoda, geniuses. The sculpt of that, the build of Yoda is incredible, you know. Flawless. I mean, it's perfection. Yoda should be in some museum, and Frank's performance, obviously, you know, and the people in the scene that are working with Yoda, Mark Hamill, he helps sell the idea that this puppet is alive as well. There's so many elements. I think it's an amazing art form, you know. And now it's like this motion capture thing, which is also an amazing art form. And I really don't think there's a lot of people that really truly get it,
For
unless
sure.
you have been in it,
Yeah.
not necessarily in the suit, but in the world of making creatures. Only those people know, the work it takes and the focus it takes, you know. Anyway, I'll shut
Well,
up.
I really no, I really appreciate you telling me all this and coming on telling your stories. I think this is amazing. I did want to ask you really fast before
Yeah,
we
ask.
go.
Yeah, of course.
So I saw on your IMDb that you did a Muppets Tonight episode with Garth Brooks, and it had you credited as additional Muppets. Do you
Yeah,
remember which Muppets
I
you
was in
did?
this big crowd scene. And Garth Brooks, I also did who is that comedian? Old school comedian. Um I forget his name. There was such an awkward moment. Um anyway, but yeah, I was there. Garth Brooks. Garth Brooks was cool, He wanted to throw the football in the parking lot, in the studio parking lot, and just kind of hung out. And I think with like the Muppet Show, all those guest stars, it's such a treat for them. Let's do this, you know. And all those puppeteers, Kevin Clash, who did the original Elmo, he's a genius. He's an amazing performer, so funny, so smart. Um, Bill, Steve Whitmire, who was Kermit the Frog, you know. Brian Henson, like all these, there's so many, those puppeteers are um super talented, you know. But like the original Muppet Show was way ahead of its time. Like I seen every episode of the original Muppet Show many times. I was obsessed with that show. And there was something there's a lot of humor today, even in the puppet world, where you're just like, this is not funny. I don't get it. You feel like I feel like I'm stupid. Like, why don't I get, like, I don't, because they think it's funny. It's like this inside joke that's really not given away. And I think the performers on the original Muppet Show, like, it was so not narcissistic. It was really genuine play. There was if there was it just felt genuinely non-ego. It's something. It's just was such a gift. You know,
They were
um,
all friends too. They were all worked really well together, like
I
Jerry
mean, I mean, I
Nelson.
mean, you go on the. I remember visiting Sesame Street back in when I was involved with Turtles and Dinosaurs, and I was on the set a couple times on Sesame Street. I mean, what a vibe. Those people are, it's a great vibe, you know. I'm sure they have like politics, issues here and there and drama, but like it's just these guys are just they're just so talented. This guy David Rudman, he's he's so talented, gifted,
He's
and they're
Cookie
all. I mean,
Monster now.
we call them puppeteers, but they're actors that translate this acting ability and improv ability into these objects, these characters, they're actors.
Well, that's what I've
Um,
heard many times. It's like, anyone can put a puppet on, but you have to have this ability to act as well. It's more than just, moving the mouth. You have to be able to act and be believable as that character as you would as a person portraying a character. So it's more complicated than people think it is.
yeah, but yeah, I think, like with anything, we've been exposed to the non-gifted, non-talented actors and puppeteers and in any art form, so they I don't know, like can't be that hard, you know. Barney, for example, it's like, I guess, that's an art form. Um,
Dino sync is what they call that, where do the mouth and then the voice is separate from the guy in the suit for that.
but I mean, Barney, I mean, I guess I don't think we should judge Barney. I mean, for what it is, it was spectacular, I guess. I guess you could, you know, um, I don't know. I think I'm wrong. I think, it's a simplistic suit, blah, 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 but maybe that's the point, you know.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was founded by this mom who wanted something for her kids in Texas.
You know about this.
Bob West, who voiced Barney, is a good friend of mine.
Okay. Okay.
So I've learned about all of this. I've learned about all this stuff from him. Talking with him, and yeah, so it was just this concept. This woman wanted something different for her kid, so she made a bunch of VHS tapes with this very low budget suit and everything, and then it got sold to PBS and became this huge thing that became really popular, and it just went from there. So
Amazing.
yeah.
Wow. Well, someone should be interviewing you. You're like a wealth of knowledge. You should do like a documentary. Why aren't you putting a documentary together?
You're not the first person that's asked me that. My dad is a documentary photographer. He said the same thing. So maybe I'll enlist his help with that and do that someday.
I mean, there was one documentary that was sort of on superforming. Do you know about
I
this?
do. I've seen it. It's really good. John Alexander's in it.
You think it's really good?
I thought it was pretty informative.
I
Yeah.
think it's awful.
Really? Wow. Okay.
Yeah, there's so many things they're not even covering in that.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
There's so many people they didn't even talk to. There's so many people. They don't even mention Kevin Peter Hall in this documentary.
I thought it was. I mean, I just meant for like what they had in it, but they definitely needed more. I mean, I would agree with you there. They needed more time spent, or at least a sequel about it.
No, I mean, there's so many, it's all American too. Like, how about all the stuff that's happening in Europe and Japan? And like, you could just, there's so bread and puppet theater in Vermont. I mean, you just go, go, go. There's so many things to cover, and they're just covering TV and film, American TV and film. Say what?
Well, maybe I'll be the guy that makes the one that encompasses all.
Oh, I'm saying like you could. You're pulling stuff. Oh yeah, Barney, you know. Um,
Good stuff, though.
but
It's
thank you
all
for thank you for reaching out, man.
definitely. This has been a lot of fun, and I really appreciate your time and your stories. And
It's a great community.
it is, it
It
is.
really is great. I'm gonna try to hopefully who will accept my request on Facebook? Is there somebody that actually runs that group?
Yeah. So there's a couple of administrators. I think is a guy named Craig Lamb. But if they see that, I mean, they know who you are from Born to Be Wild and Ace Ventura and Buddy. If they saw your name come up that you wanted to join, they would add you immediately, 100%.
Facebook,
Ape Suit Cinema.
Facebook Ape Suit Cinema.
Yes.
I'm doing it right now.
Yeah. They would be over the moon because you've been mentioned in that group several times. And what's funny is the group got shut down. There was an original
Does
Ape Suit
everyone
Cinema.
hate Born to Be Wild?
They love the suit.
They
They love
do.
the suit.
Do they hate my performance?
No, they just I think they think that like
It's
again, they
goofy.
felt the storyline was a little cheesy, but they love the suit and they love the performance of you in the suit.
You can be honest.
No, no, really, that's the general consensus. Yeah.
Okay. You can keep all this in, by the way.
No, no, no.
Um,
That's how they feel. I mean, but they know who you are and they know about Tony Gardner. And like I said, he's in the group and another guy,
Tony is,
Binky, I
oh,
can't.
gee,
He's in the group too.
wonderful person. I miss him. He came to my 30th birthday party a long time ago. Beinke's that guy. He's an artist too, you know. Um, it's a wonderful world of people that do that. It's incredible. Have you ever been to a shop?
Never been.
Oh, dude, we got to make that happen.
I'd love to go.
The
I'd be happy.
animatronic world is kind of disappearing. You never went to Stan Winston Studios or Rick Baker or anything like this kind of stuff?
Never, never. I didn't know that I could go. I didn't know there was a way to do that.
I don't even know if these places exist, but it's amazing. I think that's of all of this, what we're talking about, like performances and this movie, that TV show, the most wonderful aspect of all of this are the shops, the people that make these characters and these, creatures. These are the people that need to be applauded. And I don't know why it's not like an Oscar thing. Not maybe not in the show horse night, that the previous night to do like the workhorse, all the technical. They should have awards for these shops, what they do, because it's, you know, they're virtuosos, at making this stuff. It's incredible what they're doing.
They really are. There should be a documentary just on that alone, like
Oh my
the
God.
shops.
Have you ever seen like a picture of a Ninja Turtle head without
Uh,
the skin?
no, never have.
I'll text you one. It's
Please
inc-
do.
it's incredible. The eyeballs, what they make them out of, they're just, what went into making and all the servos and all the electronics to the lead to like a computer system that's operated by remote control to put these things. It's insane. It's like creating a lunar lander that lands on Mars, like it's incredible, and then the sculpting of these costumes of what and the painting. and the detail and the texture and with the gorillas with the hair. I mean, it's like you go into the and you're watching these people hunched over, you know. It's
What's
just
funny, the Mighty Joe Young head, one of the heads from the one of the suits, went up on eBay for sale like
what?
5 years ago. And it was like this crazy price. Something was way out of my range. And it got swooped up immediately. I don't even know who owns it now. But I remember they put that in the ape group that somebody was sorry about that. Um,
The
they
ape
put in the group
group?
that someone was doing that. And then it was gone immediately. Like I tried to click on the post and then I saw it and then I refreshed and it was gone. Someone had already swooped it up. So
Crazy. Um, I have a request. Maybe even ask people if you know someone. I'm looking for a pair of arm extensions.
okay.
Um, I'll buy them, whatever. Um, I can't find one. I need a, I'm dying I'm 60 years old now, and I am dying to have a pair of arm extensions so I can walk around the neighborhood. That's how crazy I am.
I will definitely put the feelers out and see what I can do. I'll let you know.
And I think at one point they say, "Hey, you can keep these. Do you want them?" I don't know why I didn't keep them. It's crazy. Um, those arm extensions aren't easy to make, by the way. Like it's just they're
Imagine.
just so talented, the people that make these creatures. Mhm.
I would love to go inside one of these, I'd feel like a kid in a candy store if I got to see the inner workings of that. I always wanted to go to the Muppet Studios too, where they made all the puppets, but
We got to make that happen.
like the
You
one
would,
in LA.
you, you would love it. I mean, they're closing the one in LA, the Creature Shop. Henson just sold the Chaplin Studios, so they're gone. I don't know where they're going to. I mean, that Henson Creature Shop in London is gone. You know, that was epic. I have pictures of that. I'll text you some pictures of inside the original warehouse where the Creature Shop was in London. It's incredible.
I'd love to see that and any, photos that you have of the gorilla stuff. I'd love to see that too.
Okay, I'll share my. I have like a huge scrapbook. I kept a scrapbook of all of that stuff.
Yeah, I'd love to see
Um,
it.
like even Born to Be Wild, a bunch of stuff.
Would love
Uh,
that.
yeah. Um, thank you for telling me about the group too.
Definitely.
Facebook Ape Suit Cinema.
That's it. That's it.
Facebook Ape Suit Cinema. I'm gonna, I have a memory of a goldfish, so uh,
They will love to see you coming.
but Facebook is part of the Facebook Ape Suit Cinema. Okay, cool.
That'll be great. Well, like I said, I really appreciate this
Have you talked to
conversation.
John Alexander?
I can't get a contact for him. I would love to talk to John, but I can't find a contact. I don't think he's on social media.
He's up there now. I mean, he's older than me, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. I first
Um,
saw him in Gorillas in the Mist and then followed him from there.
Gorillas in the Mist. Amazing work. Peter Elliott was in Gorillas in the Mist, wasn't he?
He was.
Yeah. And John, yeah,
John was Digit, the one who gets his head cut off.
that's right. Yeah, I mean, Gorillas in the Mist is sort of like that sort of raised the bar for that type of work because they really committed to, you know, being realistic, you know.
Such a sad film. Such a sad film.
Sad, sad film. And Mighty Joe Young, which is amazing. John Alexander, like, that's the best gorilla of all time, if you ask me.
Especially
And
that
all
end
the
scene where
people
he's
that
going
were,
wild.
huh?
Especially that end scene where he's going wild at the fair and all over LA. Like that is insane.
Insane. But there's a lot of scenes that I appreciate where he's so subtle, you know. He's so good. Um, Congo is a nightmare. I hate watching that. I think it's stupid.
Wasn't
But
Tim Curry in that?
is it Tim Curry?
I think he was in that.
Yeah, it's just but Gorillas in the Mist, like that was amazing work. That was amazing. Those guys deserve all the love. The people that made those gorillas, was that Baker who did Gorillas in the
It
Mist?
was Baker. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Rick Baker.
And I think they used a suit from that for when for the little part in Baby's Day Out, another kids film. John was the gorilla in that. I think that was a suit from
That's
Gorillas in the
right.
Mist.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, John had a knack for that.
Yeah. That was Vern Troyer's film debut.
Oh, really?
He was doubling the baby. Yeah.
Telling you, you need to make a documentary
I love all of this stuff. I
because
nerd
you
out
know where
all.
to go. You have all this information. You're not, sometimes people make documentaries and they're just kind of starting and they're gathering info and they're being journalists and investigators and they go this way and they're led this way. You kind of know where to land already. I'm
And
telling
I
you,
found that it all connects. It all connects in some way. Like Bob West, the guy that voices Barney, he's a graphic designer now. He designed some of the graphics for the latest Muppet series. So it all connects.
the one with Animal, the band.
That's the one. Yep.
Okay, cool. That was so sad. There was what was it called again?
Not Muppets Mayhem. Was it Muppets?
Yeah, Mayhem. Muppets Mayhem. It won an Emmy. Best children's programming. Best children's show. And they canceled it. What? And it
I
was it
know.
was great. There were so many great things about that show. It was amazing.
It was. It was
And they
great.
just canceled it. Like, are you sick?
Yeah. Well, kids are
What?
too much in their phones now, I guess. I don't know. What else can you say?
I guess. But thank you. Thanks for talking to me, man.